I'm in a really good mood as the no wave Nostradamus because, as all my predictions previously are coming to fruition, this is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl. What episode is this, Simon Satanic Slater?
I believe that this is the 148.
Well, it's only numbers and who's counting. How
Well,
are you?
Let me just confirm this.
2 from 150. Wow. It's
yes, it's episode 148.
All right. Do people have 150th anniversaries? I mean, I don't know. So how are you doing, Lydia? How are you doing?
I'm a bit Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Spending 4 hours trying to book tickets for our upcoming shows. I warn anybody who's thinking about traveling soon, the prices are so outlandish that you might as well just walk. It'll be a lot cheaper.
Which leads me to my first story.
How did I know?
Drew Odell was arrested on petite larceny. He was busted stealing 10 gallons of diesel. He was siphoning it actually from trucks from isn't Florida, I don't know which town, from the A&A recycling company. So he topped the fence and was siphoning out diesel out of their trucks, and then he got busted. And he had one quote: "Diesel's too expensive." And diesel is more expensive than regular gas. He's like, it's like over $5 something a gallon, close to $6. So it's pretty insane. Now, I don't want to incriminate any of my close friends, but I do know
you're diesel suckers.
In high school, I have a friend that's closer than you think. He and his brother would steal gas every now and then.
Were they huffers?
No. They didn't have to do the labor like that. They basically, it was a smaller town. They had a decoy, and there's basically one of those little gas tubes that like does a ding 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 when you run over it, so the gas station knows you're there. They figured out how to avoid that, while the other one went to like talk to the moron and like, hey, well, what kind of chips do you have? Or just all this shit.
While the
other one was filling up the tank, and they drive off. And they didn't have to do that. It wasn't like we're really poor. They just did that.
Well,
because it was fun.
You two petite criminals. I want to talk about some big ass criminals here for a minute. So analysis exposes big oil's plot to unleash climate killing. Oh, still ongoing again. Carbon bombs worldwide. Now, a new investigation published Wednesday reveals that some of the largest motherfucking criminal kleptomaniac assholes, fossil fuel corporations in the world, from Exxon to Gazprom to whatever Saudi Arabia's is, are planning to they're currently already operating 200 carbon bombs, which are massive oil and gas projects that could unleash 646 billion tons of CO2 emissions and doom efforts to rein in planetary warming. Okay, quote unquote, they are destroying your future. They are doing it deliberately. They have been doing it for decades, no doubt.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so this report that's just been published, it identifies at least 195 carbon bombs that are either in the process of being built or already in place across the globe. And scientists, thousands of them, have already warned that fossil fuel use must be quickly phased out to prevent catastrophic climate outcomes. So this research is led by the University of Leeds, and the research specifically defines carbon bombs as, quote, projects capable of pumping at least 1 billion, can't even comprehend that amount, tons of CO2 emissions over their lifetime. Now, around 60% of the projects are already producing oil and gas. And projects identified include the new drilling wells springing up in the Canadian wilderness as part of the vast oil and gas development there in the huge Northfield gas fields, and also Qatar, of course, named in the study as the biggest new oil and gas carbon bomb in the world. Now, according to the research, the U.S. really is the leading source of potential emissions. In 22 carbon bombs that include conventional drilling and fracking and span the deep waters of the Gulf of Mexico to the foothills of the Front Range in Colorado. It's together, they have a potential to emit, it's still uncountable, we can't even comprehend, 4 times, almost 4 times more than the entire world admits each year. All right. Welcome to the apocalypse.
Most of it's cars. Just our consumption in general.
Consumption in general. Hate to be the no wave Nostradamus, but
well, so
kind of what I am.
All right, well, if I'm going to run with that, because
why shouldn't you? Run as fast as possible. I mean, because that doesn't take up any gas or oil.
So Lake Mead.
Oh God, nothing left.
Well, it's dropped 160 feet since 2000. 160 feet. I mean, that's all. But you know what's been happening?
To tell.
They're finding old corpses, murdered corpses. And just a couple, just the other week, there was someone stuffed in like some oil drum or container, and they figured out there was a body in there, and it was just kind of just blown away with a lot of bullet holes, and they figured out it was from, somehow they already figured out forensics, your favorite. They figured out it must have been from the late 70s, early 80s. So they're like, oh my God, because now, there's just access to this area that there was never access to before. And then just yesterday,
it's like the West Coast Pine Barrens almost.
Kind of
dumping ground.
2 days ago, they found some old skeletons from even further back. So it's always amazing when I know Minneapolis used to have an issue all the time because they used to get so much snow, and they still do get quite a bit. Not that there are murders, but when that spring comes in and the winter snow starts melting, it's like Jack Nicholson in Shining at the end. There's like a dad's, his frozen corpse is starting to thaw. Coming back from the bar, can't find his keys, like sits on the front steps and then falls asleep. And the next thing you know, he's a statue. So it's always interesting when weather patterns change and it reveals human corpses. At least it's interesting to me.
Well, I mean, pretty soon we're just going to be burned to death. So I don't know if you saw this, either of you two, but I recently saw Don't Look Up. I
never saw it because everyone's like, it sucks. And not that I take other people's advice.
It doesn't suck for this reason. It's a dark comedy, but it relates to the story I'm about to tell. And the thing is, it's so outlandish at some points that it is what could possibly be happening, that a giant, asteroid is barreling towards Earth very short time before it lands. And instead of just trying to defuse it, someone who's a very much Elon Musk type autistic corporate cunt decides instead to blow it into little pieces because of all the rare earth minerals on there that will power everything that we have. Okay, so in real life, which this kind of mimics, the 15,000 mile per hour space crash that may help save the future of mankind. Suicide mission by craft the size of a golf cart is not just a self-indulgent experiment dreamed up by NASA. Okay, so scientists are coming up with ways to stop asteroids that may wipe out humanity as they've done in the past. So one of these is
they've wiped out humanity in the past. You mean they've wiped out living things in the past? All right. Sorry.
Right. Well, and humanity, we're wiping ourselves out. Right. So one of these is to try to knock the asteroids off the collision course with our planet. So now NASA, who's got all the money in the world to spend anyway, because why not spend it on space instead of the space we are destroying here, is set to launch a 269 million pound mission to test out to see if this would work on a real asteroid.
Okay.
So good luck with that. So anyway, they say the very future of mankind could depend on its success because, and it's called the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, or DIRT for short, may well provide the answer to a problem that has preoccupied astronomers for centuries: what to do.
How often does this happen, though? How often does a massive asteroid impact the Earth? I mean, how long is the human species going to be around anyways? Like, what is the probability? Well,
there you go. And that brings me to this other story, which is just terrifying. In the here and now, scientists detect common fungicide in pregnant women and children. Now, I have 101 reasons why I don't breed, but this is just another one in my the war below my belt. So for the first time, UNC Chapel Hill researchers have measured the concentration of a biomarker of a commonly used fungicide in the urine of pregnant women and children. Okay. And the problem is this fungicide is so widely being used right now in certain brands of mold resistant wallboard. So it used to be lead paint we worried about. Now it's wall boards. And it shows that pregnant women and children are exposed to these fungicides at a much higher level than expected, even from food sources. Okay. And these chemicals are also, first of all, they stimulate free radical production and disrupt all parts of the neurons important for cell division. And pity be it that the agricultural industry, not our best friends, began using these fungicides and related fungicides in the mid 1990s. And usage, of course, has increased to 1,000 tons applied to vegetables, nut, potato, grapevine crops, cereals, grass. And the thing is, this is something that they're deciding is possibly one of the reasons of the uptick in autism and various other health ramifications that children are having right now. I mean,
the uptick in autism is happening globally, but it's disproportionately happening more in the United States than other countries. So it's that's a tough one. I mean, it's not like they don't want to figure out what's going on. They still don't really know.
And I mean, not to be a conspiratist, but they want to poison pregnant women and children so they breed autistic babies who might become tech savvy to make them more money.
Well, it's a new slave class. I've heard it's a new slave class. All these all these programmers. I mean, another point is my brother who works for the CDC brings up, you have to look at all the angles. The ruler and the margins of how we define autism have considerably grown just to have more compassion in general, because kids would get bullied all the time just a few decades ago and no one really knew what was going on. So the ruler, just to treat that, it's wider. And then, of course, everyone wants to have a superstar kid, and they want to blame someone else for the reason that their kid has autism,
or they want to call everything something so that they can categorize it, name it, define it, and pigeonhole it.
There's that too. Yeah.
I mean, in the past, some of us were just naughty. And then, then we had ADDH, and then we had autism. And the thing is, a lot of the mental disabilities or possibilities that we have can be due to the amount of frickin' poison we have to breathe, eat, and subside on.
It's probably everything. It's probably all the things we're mentioning. It's probably everything.
Plus, humans are not perfect.
Well, speaking of having...
Except for myself, of course.
Not kids, because a kid is technically a baby goat. Calves. Lucy the cow just had her 15th birthday, and you know why she's famous?
I have no idea.
She's from Merrill, Wisconsin. She has two noses. She's got like her regular giant cow nose, and then she's got this like little piglet nose right above it. And she had. There's international stories about her when she was born and all stuff. It's totally two functional noses. Everything's fine. She's given birth, blah, blah, blah.
Well, since most people have two functional mouths, one that they speak with and the other that they speak out their ass with, I don't think that's so astonishing.
I had a friend in college who dated a girl with two vaginas. She had one set of lips, and then once you spread those, it's like, whoa, got two different doors in here.
Well, I would tell you 10 facts you don't know about your own genitalia, but I'll save that for next time. But I did see the baby goats that actually you
kid me not.
I don't, at the Kentucky Derby to calm the horses down, like baby goats, not right out of the crotch.
Oh, it's really.
They have goats at the Kentucky Derby that befriend the horses and calm them down.
Well, that horse that won was something strike. I don't know what it was called. I don't follow. But
yeah, I've got no interest in
80
horse
to 80 to 1 odds. I mean, I honestly just happened to turn on the TV when that 1 minute race that they waited 6 hours that day to build up to happen. I think that thing was on some performance enhancing drugs. I mean, it made us, and then when it won, it started like attacking the other horses.
Because it wanted its baby goat back.
Maybe that's what it was.
It wanted its baby goat back.
Not bad. All right, so all right.
That cheered us up.
It did.
Actually, there was There was a site where people were like just tuning in to watch goats. That made them happy. The way that people watch kittens, they watch dogs. You know me, I just like to look out the window and occasionally see a cardinal or a squirrel. And by the way, the minute we started talking today, Tim, I thought this was a good luck charm, considering we should have good luck, that a cardinal landed right on my windowsill as we spoke.
But I was like, but it was in conducting, in classical music conducting, the point at which the baton goes down the most, and then right the microsecond before it's about to go up, is called the ictus. And so the whole, because the orchestra is so spread out on the stage, they really and sound travels slower than the way they see things. That's how they would keep orchestras together. They would all wait for that ictus. So the way you described it when you called me, I said yes. It was really that microsecond where the cardinal just landed right there. It was like, yes, boom. That's always fun when that kind of stuff happens.
Well, I consider you my personal ictus.
Okay. All right. Well,
that fucking
here's quote unquote ictus story.
All right, let's get it on.
Well, it's not even ick. It's just funny. Or it isn't. You decide. I think it is. So Joseph McKinnon, age 60, from where are they from? South Carolina somewhere, some county.
By the way, you know that South Carolina's been having a series of earthquakes recently.
I saw you sent that
bizarre,
to me.
Very weird.
Micro ones, but yeah, they don't know why.
Fracking, maybe, who knows?
Maybe. So Joseph McKinnon, 60, of Edfield County, South Carolina, gets into some blowout with his girlfriend, Patricia Dent. And he ends up strangling her to death in the house. So then he's like, what do I do? So then he waits the night. He wraps her and all this stuff, and then waits to nighttime to go.
Love this story.
And starts digging her grave, at which point he has a fatal heart attack and dies.
Good for him. Because you know what? I don't understand why people that are homicidal, and by the way, I just did read a study on that of course we know this, anybody who knows forensics, that the brains of psychopaths are 10% larger in the striatum, which is part of the frontal lobe. But anyway, why don't people that want to go on these mass or minor expeditions in murder just fucking strangle themselves?
Well,
Take it away.
Well,
just blow.
I know.
I mean, we have to thank the Mother Judd for, she, and did you hear this, that the matriarch of the Judd family,
Judds. Yes.
The Judds. I mean, sad be it, but I guess she was 78 or 79. She couldn't take her depression anymore and actually used a gun. I mean, studies say, and you can quote me on this, because I thought it was about 73 or 75% of musicians have depression. I just read an article today that said, no, actually, probably it's 90%. Hence brings me up to the reason I made, which will be out soon, my documentary on artist depression, anxiety, and rage.
That, particularly, I would imagine, well, if you don't have success in music and you're dedicated to music for your life, that there can be depression with that. But then if you have, what a lot of people don't realize, if you have success in music,
many people that have success,
and you're bombarded by that success, and then your brain, it's just like any drug, you get addicted to the instant gratification, the experience, the audience response, and then you take it away.
Well, and there's there's really so many other reasons why people suffer. And, and the thing is, I mean, I really pity people that are so hooked onto social media, because the uprising mental health issues for especially young girls who are just addicted to their social media is just, it's sad. It's saddening. Just get the fuck off. I mean, what more do you need than this? The Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and our special guest, Norman Reedus of The Walking Dead, Boondock Saints, and so many other incredible things that he's done. Photographer, painter, sculptor, producer, director, and now his first novel published, The Ravage by Blackstone Books. I'm really glad to have Norman Reedus on. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, and our very special guest. I can't even believe it. Wish he was sitting right here next to me, but this is as close as we get now. Norman Reedus, actor, photographer, motorcycle enthusiast, producer, director, ex-model. I'm sure you love that one on your resume. And I love it. And an author of a fantastic new novel called The Ravaged on Blackstone, which comes out this week. Hi, Norman Reedus.
Hi, it's good to see you.
It's really good to see you. And let me just tell you how I got your book. I mean, it was a Friday night. I'm hanging around and I get an email checking at 6 o'clock. And it's from one of your guys. And they're like, oh, I know this is really short notice, but can you read Norman's book and give us a blurb by Monday? I think it's like 280 or whatever pages. I'm like, sure. So I ate it, devoured it, because it is something one wants to devour. It's really good. And then I decided to send you a little gift by reading some of it, because I think that a lot of writers, I mean, until they really hear what they've written, they might not know how good it is. So Norman, the book is great.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Let's talk about that. I mean, when were you writing this during the pandemic? Were you writing it during off hours of The Walking Dead, now in its 12th year, 11 seasons? When did this happen?
I have this production company called Big Bald Head. Amanda Verdon and I run it. We have an office in Chinatown. So I'm constantly looking for stories. And so there was a train hopping thing I was working on as a television show, and Brent Hines.
Wait, a follow-up to Ride, your motorcycle series, now Train Hoppers.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't going to be a show like Ride. It was going to be like a scripted television show, but it was an idea I had and I was working with. And Brent Hines from Macedon would tell me some stories about how he used to jump trains as a kid. So I had that one going, and I was in New Zealand doing an episode of Ride with Josh Brolin, and I was on my way to Italy. I stopped in LA for what I thought was going to be 5 days on the way to Italy, and I got a call when I landed saying Italy's on lockdown right now.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, and then so I was in LA, and all of a sudden I was that 5 days turned into like a year. And I keep
welcome to the pandemic.
Yeah, right. But it was the first time that I had any time to sit still for a second. And and I always get asked every year to write a book about my life, and I don't want to get beat up, so I haven't done that yet.
Well, also, I mean, look, you have enough, people, both men and women, that are already madly in love with you. I mean, you don't want that to happen either. I mean, it's a cross between getting the crap beaten out of you or just getting too much love in your direction.
Maybe, I have a lot of friends that if I put them in a book, they would knock on my door and beat me.
They'd go nuts.
So, yeah, and I don't want to do that. Maybe I'll do it when I'm like 80 or 85 or something, but
that didn't happen to me, but then again, I didn't really use their names, even though they know the guilty are always the guilty, and there you go.
Yeah, these were all good guys who were doing bad things, but I just didn't with it. So they I had this book offer, and this one company, Blackstone, they came to me a couple of times, and I think they originally wanted to do that, and I had all these ideas, and I kind of said, let's do a book of fiction. My attorney was like, what are you talking about, a book of fiction? This is not what we do. And I'm like, I'm doing this. So
well, first of all, look, acting is fiction, but writing fiction, I don't write fiction. I find it really a difficult thing. I mean, I just write from experience or reality. But in your fiction, I think what's really important, and then I can't wait to hear more of what you're saying, is that the basic element of this book that makes it so mandatory is the emotional impact of three very diverse characters, all in search of either escaping from their family, looking for their people, looking to get away from, and looking really for something more.
Yeah, when I was done with it, and it did come from my own personal stories as well. The Jack character is a character that I met on a plane, which was a crazy story. I was coming from Costa Rica to Uruguay, and how that works is I leapfrog, and the bike that I ride leapfrogs, and then the B unit will send me here, the A unit will catch up, and we'll go to the next place, So I'm sitting on a plane, and I'm covered in dust, and I smell really bad, and there's a backpack at my feet with dust coming out of it, and people are going up and down the plane saying, hey, can I get a picture? And finally, this big businessman in like kind of short shorts is sitting next to me, and he goes, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm on a TV show. That's what that is." And he starts talking to me. He tells me that he owns a Fortune 500 company, and I don't ask him what it is. And I figures if he's going to tell me, he's going to tell me. And he says, "My mother died, and on her deathbed said, 'Please run away.'" And he didn't know what she meant. And then his wife died, and he was alone, and he just sort of ran away. And so he would meet somebody, and they go, "You should go to Chile." And he'd go, "Okay." "You should go to Argentina." "Okay." So he was kind of on this search, doing something that I was doing, sitting right next to him, kind of. And he looked at me and he goes, "You know," and with tears in his eyes, he goes, "I've spent my whole life making money. I've wasted my whole life." And just tears were coming down his face. And it hit me. And so I ran with that. It stayed in my head for so long. I kind of ended up running with something like that. And
that's one of them. There are three main characters in the book. And it's that's the one I decided to read to you for you of your own book, just as a little gift, because I just found it very heartbreaking. I mean, because it is somebody out of our normal spectrum, out of our realm, who we associate with, but who, after leading this, commercial life, just realizes he's got no soul. And then
also time is the greatest commodity. You finally come to that conclusion when you make a shitload of fucking money, and that's what your time's eroded. You've got
and
really
it's not as if the character has a good time once he decides he needs to find himself. He actually gets the shit beaten out of him, which is what life will do to you. That sometimes you need to have happen in order to wake you up. So it was during the pandemic that these stories that have been coalescing just seemed to come together.
Yeah, they all kind of came together, and I didn't realize it till after it was done, but somebody said, this is, they sort of compared it to The Walking Dead, and how people find a sense of family in an apocalypse in the weirdest, strangest places. And I was like, maybe that was in my mind, and I was really, maybe it was on my head, and I sort of went in that direction a little bit. But
I want to read a quote from Matt Bondurant, who wrote about the Ravage, because I think this really sums it up really well. Is quote, "The Ravage is a wild ride through the underbelly of America, following three characters who are running for their lives and running into trouble. This bold foray into the classic road novel genre has plenty of ass kicking and bloody knuckles, but ultimately, Reedus is always aiming for the heart muscle." And this is really what was important to me in this book. Okay. And many readers will appreciate the deeply felt introspection and cathartic moments rendered here. And I also love that he calls it grit lit. I never even heard that phrase before. Grit lit. So grit lit. I like that. But that really kind of sums up. And also what I loved is that one of the characters, who's a biker dude, I mean, has the most compassion in the whole book, and people need to realize, I think that's a really good point to make, because how, especially now, the judgment by the perception of image is so ridiculous and so damaging, and also so detrimental to some people's actual physical life.
Yeah. That character has that first story, how his story opens up, is something that happened to me in real life when I worked at a motorcycle shop. So there, down to some of his tattoos. My father was a traveling salesman who would do that, drop stories on me from his travels, and make me think about stuff instead of just telling me, don't do this or do that. And, so there's a lot of that character in me. There's some of the Anne story is part of me. Even the other story is a little bit part of me too. But that guy was he gave me such a strong impression that and at one point I was going to have all these stories intertwined. Like I was going to have that guy dancing and, before he gets beat up, and having a train go by in the background, and these like little kids are like, look at that weird old guy,
But they are interconnected by the issues that they're addressing, by the trauma of life, by how some families are really fucked up, how you need to find your own tribe. And that's what we do. That's what people like us do.
How much do you think it was the fact that you're just exhausted, you're in this kind of sequence of production, and that whole thing about flying on a plane, and you're kind of tearing up to the dumbest shit because you're just like 30,000 feet up? I mean, I have a different response to media on the plane than I do watching the same material on the ground.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, just being caught. I mean, I know when I'm touring as a musician and stuff, it's when I'm really exhausted, sometimes I just get caught off guard with other humans. And
it was more of, I was working so much and doing so many things, and I had this friend, and he's always like, why don't you stop and smell the roses? You
right.
Stop and smell the roses. And maybe, as time is ticking in my own life, I meet this guy and he's like, I've just been making money. I've wasted. And I'm like, well, really? Right? Maybe, so maybe there was a bit of that.
That bit of an exchange there.
Yeah, and it made sense. I did a interview with that guy Sway yesterday, and he read the book and he was like deeply moved by it. And he was talking about the train hopping in particular. And he was like, you jump on a grainer train, you could die this way. You jump on a lumber train, you could die this way. He was looking at the train cars as metaphors for decisions you make. And I was just like, you're great, So I'm glad that he thought of that.
I mean, the modern train hopping thing, I always think of the late 19th century into maybe 1960 or something. And so of course it still exists.
But
I just don't know what that looks like.
Who used to hop trains is Herbert Huncke, the original Beat, when he was like 10, 11, 12, going from one place to another.
Also, one of the big 20th century composers was doing that for a second.
No,
I forget who it was. I'll pick it up.
Norman, any books that have influenced you? And for instance, when you're on the set, like for 10 or 11 years, and of course, what you do in The Walking Dead is absolutely physically exhausting, and you're out in the woods. I mean, what do you do after hours? Do you read, or are you just too brain dead to read? Do you watch some TV? What do you do in those off hours?
A lot of music, to be honest. I ride motorcycles a lot in the country, especially to set. When we first started the show, the lead actor at the time, Andrew Lincoln, and I would always read that book, The Road, to each other. And John Hillcoat, who did the movie, is a good friend of mine. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Yeah, but we
not on the road, but The Road by Cormac McCarthy, who's an amazing Southern Gothic writer. Yeah,
but we thought Walking Dead, we would eventually end up with no teeth, emaciated, just fucking animals, and we thought that's where we were headed. So we read that to each other a lot. There was a book, Aldous Huxley, Ape in Essence, I really wanted to make something out of. But I don't know, sometimes I read, sometimes I listen to music, sometimes I read other people's things and try to develop into something else. I do a lot of art shows as a photographer right now.
Right. And so you have your book of photography, which came out. I mean, you did that mainly while you're ensconced in doing the shooting for The Walking Dead. So you're documenting, which I thought that was very interesting. When you're doing visual art, or you also paint, I've never seen any of your paintings, but what style is that? And I mean, also that obviously needs space and time. What I love about photography is snap, as opposed to doing music or doing films, TV, which you do it and then it takes so long for it to come out. Photography is so immediate and so satisfying.
Yeah, I haven't done as much painting since I've become famous. It's it's the traveling and the camera and all of that
right.
I've kind of been doing most of. I have 3 photography books out now.
What are the titles of those?
Geez, let me see what I got.
Do you even remember?
Here, they're probably right here next to me. I got thanks for all the niceness. I have In the Woods. I have a few, and I do art shows all the time. So I just had one in Copenhagen. I have one in Paris coming up. I do all of them. But
do you find a different satisfaction in the photography because again, it's a more immediate format, and it is documenting, and I think that's just really an important part of what one does.
Yeah, I mean, the documenting part definitely happens. I did one book and a show in Times Square of roadkill, and I would ride my motorcycle to work every day. And there's amazing roadkill in Georgia in the woods. And
Sure.
And I would ask people, I was like, hey, you know, I'd text them, hey, if you see any good roadkill, can you remember where it was? But I did the show. I did the show in Times Square, and the guy that was putting on the show freaked out when he got my folder of photographs.
What did he think it was going to be? What did he think it was going to be?
I think his response was, these are holiday shoppers in the city. They don't want to see cats with their eyeballs popped out. I think was that quote.
Then maybe they shouldn't ask you.
Yeah, and then I said, well, that's all I'm working on right now. And they go, no, we'll put it up. And it was all for an animal rescue place as well. I donated the proceeds to it, and we sold every photo in like 15 minutes. So he was like, great job.
What was the strangest roadkill animal corpse you came across?
There's a lot of raccoons.
Yeah,
there's
raccoons.
Deer, there's cats, there's all sorts of stuff. But the raccoons, there was a lot of them that had a very serene look on their face. The cats there was a couple that was total fear.
What about boars? Wild boar?
Oh no, I haven't seen a wild boar.
You know, I'm obsessed with shows that are about things that mostly only men would do, like Alone, like series where they just take 10 men and scatter them in the Vancouver Islands or in Patagonia or in Mongolia and like survive, and whoever survives long, Deadliest Catch, anything that I would never do. I'm really love to binge on these kind of shows. I don't know why. And I guess maybe that's why so many people are attracted to The Walking Dead. They'll never have to use such incredible artillery or kill a bunch of zombies.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, that I first read that pilot way back when, and I didn't even read the zombies in it. We do these things where we try to get awards every year, and you kind of kiss the ring and you go and you take
well, you've gotten some awards. I mean, you don't really need that many more, but go ahead.
There's a process that you go through, and it's, selfies for the daughters or whatever. And they're not going to give you one because they're like zombies. Ooh, I can't watch, and you're like, the show's not really about zombies.
Right.
But,
look deeper. Right.
There's a whole bunch of things in there besides the zombies, but yeah. So it's all a weird process.
Were you into guns, armament, artillery, things like that before the show started, or did you really go hardcore once it started? Because you do sport some pretty interesting implements.
Yeah, I mean, we have some cool weapons on the show. I did a movie called The Boondock Saints a long time ago, and I came off of the plane, and there's a lot of guns in that movie, and that movie didn't get released because of the Columbine shooting. But but I got off the plane with my little bag, and I went to this director's house, and he pulled out a Glock, and he goes, "Take it apart, put it back together." All I was like, what?
I'll be back in a few weeks.
Were you raised on guns?
Not at all.
Not at all. Where'd you grow up?
Northern California, a little bit in Colorado, a little bit in Texas. I dropped out of school, went to Tokyo for a little bit, and actually Chiba, which is the southern piece.
Yeah, I know where that is.
Well, why did you go there? What brought you there?
My mom married a guy, and the guy was a geochemist for an oil company out of Japan. And when I left school, she was like, "Do you want to come here?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so I went there and went into Tokyo quite frequently and met a guy that a French guy who he sang in a band, and his father ran a French restaurant in Tokyo, and he was going to take it over. And I ended up kind of moving in with him and living in Japan.
Were you going to like some of all the music shows, the live houses, the underground weird stuff? Were you
some of it? Yeah. There was some really. I had a friend named Chiba who was from Chiba. He kind of like Sid Vicious but Japanese. And he was in a band called Buckingham Cuden, which means Buckingham Palace. So he took me to a lot of very interesting places. It was a wild time. I was like, I don't know, 18 or something.
Yeah.
So,
what year was that?
Fuck if I know what year. I don't know.
No, because I'm thinking about Tokyo and different times and what was going on. So that's what I was just curious.
I mean, I've even done spoken word in Tokyo, and trust me, they did not understand a fucking thing I said, but that's all right. I also went to Tokyo with Fakir Musafar, who was like one of the original, suspension body manipulation, just the guru of it. And that was interesting because so many parts of Japan, and we were just talking to John Duncan, a really interesting sound artist who lived there for many years. But Japan has such a subculture of extreme photography, extreme pornography, extreme noise music, and extreme weirdness. Then also has this really closed down, conformitist, overhang, and then we have the shut-ins. It's just such a weird, you can't even really get your head around it.
One of the people that I first met there was Ryuichi Sakamoto.
Oh,
it was like an interesting group of people. I remember going to some underground place and the singer for Echo and the Bunnymen was singing, reading his lyrics. It was a while, but then also De La Soul walked in. It was like I was that year, whatever year that was.
That was a good year.
Yeah, it was a crazy year, but it was fun. Yeah.
So you were saying earlier that you'd listen to a lot of music when you're done shooting for the day. What are you into now, or what do you go back to? I mean, do you go back to stuff you loved before? Right now it's hard to find anything that's really grabbing. I want to say grabbing my nutsack, but I don't know why I'm even saying that. But I see that you were in a Run the Jewels video recently, and I do love Run the Jewels.
Yeah, John Hillcoat, who we were talking about, was directing that. So he called me and said, "Hey, I'm in Atlanta. Will you be in this video?" And I said, he was trying to explain it to me, and I said, "Can I be a dwarf?" and he was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I'd like to do this," right? And then he was describing it. We were going to do a very Deliverance sort of thing on a porch.
I could see it.
Greg Nicotero was going to be, because he plays guitar, was going to be playing the banjo, and I was going to be like staring down, the guys, and it turned into something really quick because we were running out of time. But John's a really good friend of mine. I've done a couple of things with him, and
did he also do the assassination of Jesse James by that coward Robert Frank? Did he do that film? John Hillcoat? I think he did, because he's worked with Nick Cave a lot, right? John Hillcoat.
Yeah,
from Australia.
He did. Yeah, he did Lawless. He's done a bunch of good things. And he's a really interesting dude. And his wife is like an insane photographer. They have a cool family. Their son is really cool. But yeah, so I did that video. I've done a bunch of videos that friends have made, pretty much.
Well, I might call you sometime, but I don't usually do music videos, but that's all right. We'll think about something else. What about back to music that you listen to when you're just like, all right, now I just got to do nothing. I got to listen to some music.
I always kind of go back to like Minor Threat or Sonic Youth. I'm always like in this loop right there. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, stuff like that. There's some cool girl bands I'm liking right now.
So you're kind of a punk rocker at heart, or kind of an alt rocker.
I just kind of go back to the same shit. That's
what I was having a feeling about. That's what I thought. I'm like, do you go back to stuff? Yeah, that's what I was kind of feeling.
Well, that's basically the demographics that consume the most amount of music, whether we like it or not, in the States, are males between 15 and 25. And then after 25, statistically, they just listen to different permutations of what they listen to between 15 and 25. It's kind
Tim and I agree on some musical genres, but you should see my face when he plays some music I can't stand. He knows the look. Better change that shit right now. Put some James Brown on, or I'm going to get violent.
I found the composer that was train hopping, Harry Parch. Did it for 20 or 10 years.
Amazing.
Real eccentric and like a major mind in music in the 20th century, which is
I have to say, when I hear a train go by, and this is, I spent some time in Louisville, Kentucky, just nomading. And every night that train would go by and the whistle blow, and it just felt like freedom to me. Now, I never hopped a train. Let's be serious. Please call me an Uber. But I have to say that sound was freedom to me. The sound of a train going by at night is just so lonesome, but not lonesome. It's kind of like alone. And there we go on that train ride that's going to take us into that night journey to another place, which we know we want to go to, but we don't know where it is. And it might not even exist. And as you were saying before, it might just be a metaphor for hopping into a destination you only wish you could hold in your hand. Why am I getting so poetical with you now? I'm just saying.
My dad, when my dad was dying, they brought him home, and he lived at home for a little bit. And I planted a giant magnolia tree right by his window because
one of my favorite.
Yeah, so I planted it right next to his bedroom window, and I would sit on his porch at night, and I would hear in the distance, I'd hear the train, and it was the same sort of thing. So I equate that noise with that a little bit, you know.
I mean, magnolia, gardenia, night blooming jasmine. These are also the aromas of New Orleans. Those smells, they just do something. They cleanse you somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, I would often sneak around LA with a big snipper and try to get those magnolia blossoms smell like lemon and just purify oneself.
The ones in Georgia, I mean, those magnolia trees are huge. You know, huge. Whole nother thing.
What are some of your favorite films? Do you even have time to watch films or TV series?
I like a lot of films, but I'll tell you my very favorite film is Midnight Cowboy. That's my favorite film.
I love Midnight Cowboy. I love that period of films. Like I recently saw again Dog Day Afternoon.
Great. Yeah.
Amazing. And do you know that Al Pacino only agreed to do Dog Day Afternoon? It was an actual bank robbery in a place not far from where Tim Dahl
down the street from me right
actually
now.
lives.
Avenue P.
And there was an article in Time Life that said the bank robber kind of looked like a broken-faced Al Pacino or Dustin Hoffman. So Sidney Lumet, who was directing it, Al Pacino had just come off The Godfather. He was exhausted. And Sidney Lumet called him and said, "Hey, Dog Day Afternoon." He goes, "I can't do it. I'm too tired." And he goes, "Then I'm going to ask Dustin Hoffman." Al Pacino's like, "I'll do it."
Wow. You want to see something crazy?
I do.
So my office in Chinatown, which used to be, my apartment used to be right above this.
Right.
This is Martin Scorsese standing in front of it to he's location scouting for Mean Streets.
All right.
Mean Streets. Okay, I got to quiz you on this. What about early Harvey Keitel? What about Fingers?
Fingers a classic, huh?
I haven't seen Fingers.
Oh, you check that out.
Okay. I'm going to stump you, Norman.
I haven't seen. I'm writing it down. Here's my.
You're going to write it down. I'm going to stump you on a few. One of my favorite films, Rip Torn, Coming Apart. You don't know it, do you?
I haven't seen that.
He plays a therapist who only has like female clients, Sally Kellerman being one. He lives in this like New York apartment, all windows. His wife is in Long Island. He won't go home. He's coming apart. And it's that period again, late 60s, early 70s. Nicky and Mickey by Elaine May with John Cassavetes and Peter Falk. Am I right? I think so. And the thing is, all of these films, or Who's That Knocking? Okay. All of these early films by a lot of the early directors at that period, I saw when I lived in Barcelona at 6 a.m. on Turner Classic Network. I've never seen them in America.
Have you ever seen A Girl on a Motorcycle?
No, I haven't.
With Marianne Faithfull. I was just talking about this because I'm packing now to go to Portugal and all these other places to do Ride. And it's Marianne Faithfull, who was my son's first concert. I became friends with her in France. During a crazy story, but she wears a sort of a fur, it's a one leather piece outfit with fur, and she gets naked and puts on her outfit and rides her motors. It's so great.
And by the way, Marianne Faithfull now sadly in hospice. And
I heard about that.
My friend who's been on the podcast, Tanya Pearson, who wrote a book, Why Marianne Faithfull Matters, is putting together this tribute album that she's asked all of these women to be on, myself included. Shirley Manson's going to be on it. I'm going to be on it, Adele Bertay. And I can't even believe that. And so Marianne Faithfull you're pulling it now. You're getting witchy with me, Norman. It's something is just on my mind because I want to cover, and it's not a song she wrote, but she does. Love, Lies, and Money. It's originally a Johnny Winter song. I do love my covers. But I mean, Marianne Faithfull now in hospice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awful. You know, I did a movie with Harvey Keitel once.
Oh, do tell.
Yeah. You know, it started off, we're in Chinatown, and it's supposed to be a gray, what are those dogs? A dog racing.
Greyhound.
And the first day we're doing a scene, and it's a long hallway. It's a French director. His English isn't so good. And Harvey keeps standing in the middle of the hallway and doing the thing. And I'm supposed to come. We're supposed to look at each other, all these things, but the director can't see me because he's standing in the middle of the hallway. And after like take 30, I said something and Harvey said something, but it took me barking something out and him replying for him to like respect me, and then we became friends. But I ended up strangling him and putting him in the back of his taxi in the trunk and pushing him off of that little island over there that used to
Roosevelt Island.
Roosevelt Island. Yeah.
All right. So who's that knocking? That's a Harvey Keitel film, which actually, and it's, excuse me, I think it might be, I don't know if it's Brian De Palma. It might be Scorsese, Brian De Palma. But anyway, they steal from, actually Francis Ford Coppola stole for Apocalypse Now. Absolutely a scene. And who's that knocking? Harvey Keitel is looking for a girlfriend, a wife, and he really likes this one. And there's a scene where he's in this metal bed in like a New York loft, and the camera is spinning around overhead, and the fan is spinning, and it's playing the end, and it goes through him having sex with all these women, and the one he really likes has been raped, so his Catholic guilt won't let him. Francis Ford Coppola stole that concept. Harvey Keitel. It's like we can have movie trivia anytime you want, Norman.
We can talk about Harvey Keitel forever.
Bad Lieutenant.
Bad Lieutenant,
please.
come on.
But now you just reminded me. There's Harvey Keitel. And of course, there's Willem Dafoe.
I worked with Willem as well.
That's why I'm calling that up. He's amazing, Willem Dafoe.
So going back to bikes, how many spills have you done in your life? I mean, I always
wrecked a motorcycle.
Like driving and fucking wiping out. And so that you have there's a whole skill to it, right? How you roll, but then there's also the unpredictable reality of physics and time and place.
I will say there are times when if I'm going fast around a corner, kind of out somewhere, I'll imagine how I'm going to lay the bike down when something jumps in front of me.
Okay.
I've had very graceful spills. I've had very ungraceful spills. I was in LA once, and I was coming down by that 101 cafe, Gower or Franklin or whatever that is, and this old couple were getting on the freeway, and they were in my lane. They cut right in front of me, and I hit the car. I sort of slow motion watched them underneath me, and then I hit the ground sideways, kind of slid sideways, and I had to push my bike in the bushes and walk to a friend's house because I had all these warrants for my arrest at the time.
Norman,
and I got to my friend's house. I kind of convulsed on the sofa for a while, and years later, he's a famous actor. And years later, I read an interview with him, and he told my story as if it was his story. And I was
reading motherfucker.
Oh, so that made you furious?
I never mentioned it to him, but
he's busted. Yeah. I lived with somebody that raced dirt bikes, and it's not that they love to crash, but they would do it all the time. And their mantra, which was great, was if the price of going fast is crashing, that's the price you pay. And he would come back with some blood goiters the size of a fist.
Yeah. I hear if it's, dirt don't hurt. I hear that a lot, but yes,
it does. Yes, it does. I mean, going back to your roadkill photography, was there ever a moment where an animal made you wipe out?
Oh, crap.
No, but I've hit some actually I hit an armadillo once and caught air on a freeway at night. Yeah. And there was a guy behind me, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who's also on Walking Dead. He was behind me. We were coming back from Nashville to Atlanta. And I saw it last minute, and I kind of stood up and I actually caught air. And I pulled over to the side of the road, and I was like, oh, I thought I was going to die. And he goes, what was that? It hit me on the foot. I was like, there's a fucking armadillo. It's crazy. That didn't wipe out, though.
Norman, back to the here and now, and nobody wants to hit an armadillo. That's for sure. Will you do us a fantastic, delightful, thrilling favor and perhaps treat us to some pages from your new book, The Ravaged, out now on Blackstone Press? I would love it if you did it.
Absolutely. I'll read from Anne.
Thank you. One of the three main characters in the newly released book by Norman Reedus. Thank you, Norman.
Of course. Anne's head throbbed from the pain of memories, her mother's hard palm cutting the air and thudding her face, with the words "little cunt" attached to her whiskey-stained breath. Pale hands shook, remembering the time her father gripped her wrist at the circled burner, glowing a skin scalding orange, a fork pressed to it until it smoked, then branding her flesh until her eyes watered and she screamed. His beer breath spitting. That'll remember you to be sure dishes is clean. Work all goddamn day, come home to this bullshit. Today came as a blitzkrieg of words exchanged in anger. Little bitch, skipping school again. Gonna turn into a goddamn retard. Better than a drunk, Anne retorted, her words sharp. She had learned that in this house, when you got hit, you hit back even harder with whatever was handy. The Jim Beam bottle missed her head and exploded like a rotten tomato against the faded blue kitchen wall. The cider-colored liquid sprayed the dishes piled along the scuffed Formica countertop, soaking the crumbs of PB&J sandwiches that had been eaten down to the crust, Lay's chips that had been crunched, Jack's pizza that had been pilfered for the toppings, sticky cups of Mountain Dew that had been spilled. From the unwashed clothing that lay on the cracked tile flooring, Anne grabbed shirts, pants, socks, bras, and panties. Anne was done. Had been planning for months to pack what little she had and run as far as she could from this shithole that had been her home since birth. She and Trot, her best friend, had talked and talked, wanting to jettison themselves from their shit lives, from her abusive domestication and Trot's longing to be understood. He had moved from El Paso, Texas to Johnson City, Tennessee, had been caught hopping trains off and on, had run with a group of dropouts who called themselves the Recon Rejects. Trot knew the ins and outs of freight hopping, how to hop one, when to hop one, and where to hop one. He knew where they would go, Louisiana, he'd say. There they would find a jungle where the hobos, dirty kids, and crust punks camped out, earn their keep during the day, panhandling, flying a sign, dumpster diving, running trash cans for food, water cups or clothing, get accepted into a real family by people who understood them instead of abusing them with harsh words, trying to change who they were. No more dirty dishes, bloody fists, or flesh singed with eating utensils. Hormones and rage feed her decision as she grabs her cell phone and charger and stuffs them, along with every garment she can, into the faded and dirt-smudged pink JanSport pack meant for school books when she wasn't skipping. Her mother did not understand how this wasn't right, this way of living, only that her daughter had skipped school, not caring how the kids pointed and pranked and made Anne the butt of their jokes and puns about how she reeked of cigarette smoke and dressed in wrinkled clothing. But she was clean, always made sure to bathe, even if out of bath soap. If she had to, she would use dish or laundry detergent that dried and cracked her flesh, always brushed her teeth, sometimes with baking soda when her mother was on one of her benders and her father was on the road running a delivery with the big 18-wheeler that kept everything afloat, food on the table, the rotted roof overhead, and booze flowing through her veins.
Norman Reedus reading from his new book, The Ravaged, on Blackstone Press. You know what? I have goosebumps. It really was reminding me of a cross between the bluntness of Jim Thompson, which I love, and also a bit of Harry Crews. So, you know, what I really enjoyed about this book as somebody who is a in-camera editor of literature is it is so tightly edited that there is, while I was reading it, there was not one bit of fat. So when you were writing this, Norman, like, first of all, what was your process? Did you write one character at a time when you were writing the chapters? Were you, I mean, how do you, I mean, look, speaking about Jerry Stahl, who's on this, a good friend of mine and great reader. Great. I mean, he does 60-page outlines. He has the absolutely opposite methodology of me. What was your process in writing this? And especially when there's three characters, three separate stories that come together by a morality. What was your process for this?
Well, I mean, I won't lie. I had help writing this, and I went through a series of, you know, I wanted somebody to help me paint a room. You know, I'm not really a writer. So my process was telling the story, working with the writer, bringing stuff up, bringing stuff down. All the decisions were my decisions, but he helped me paint rooms. You know what I mean? And that process was way more hours than I thought it was going to be. But you know, as far as like characters and the things, it would go little chunks of time for each one. And then an idea would come about another one, but it was never paragraph by paragraph. And there was different layers.
Right. Coming in. Okay.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
What's interesting is when, I do some workshops like, okay, you write, how do you read? And I have people read their stuff, then I read it, have them read it again, because I think it is important when people hear, but also I've told other people that you have a great story. Everybody can tell a great story. Not everybody can write a great story. And I think it's very valuable if people can recite their story and then maybe bring somebody else in to edit it. I think that's a very good process for some people, especially if the story, to me, is mandatory due to the points it's making.
Yeah, I mean, I've done screenplays like this where I work with people, and so I have a little practice at it already. You know what I mean? So the collaboration thing is it's a very hard thing to find collaboration. And there was a series of people I went through before I found Frank. And
always come to me, Norman. I love to collaborate.
I would love to.
Trust me.
How'd you find him?
I found him through a mutual friend of mine, this guy named Mark Gerald. And Mark, I had met back in the early 90s. There was a group of us that were always making things like, short films or whatever. And we kind of all knew, and you could tell back then who was going to go that way and who was going to go that way and who was going to go that way. And
well, you went all the ways though, Norman.
I think I went that way and that way and that. I kind of bounced like a bouncing ball
right.
until I found a door open. But he was one of those guys. And when I started the production company, I called him because in my mind he had libraries full of untold stories, and I don't know why I thought that. And I was like, I'm doing this thing, I want access to everything. And he was like, that's not really what I do now. Now I work with writers. And I was like,
right.
Oh.
Good.
So there was a guy that I originally went to, and it was a little kind of slutty of me, but he had a podcast that I really liked called Ravage. And I really liked the podcast. And it was a genre that AMC, when they first gave me this deal, one of the genres that they were already doing, this fit right in that shelf. And I wanted this guy because I wanted that, right? So I was trying to whore myself out a little bit, but didn't work. And then another guy didn't work. Another guy didn't work. And then I met this guy, and this guy.
When you find the guy that works, or when you find the musicians that work, when you find the collaborators that work, it's the same reason why you can work on a TV series for 10 or 12 years, because it's the right people to work with.
Yeah, there's a shorthand that kind of develops real quick, and that happened with him. And he was a whiskey drinker. He was like this dude. And so he got it. But he was like super sensitive as well. So when I went like real sensitive with a lot of storyline, he didn't make fun of it or turn the other cheek. He felt it. And so it was easy to work with him. And, and sometimes he'd go, wom, 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 and I'd be like, a little less wom, wom,
But Norman, that's what's beautiful about the book. Is that there is emotion all over it, and every character that is not sappy, that is things that so many people who are outside, which is all of us, which is anybody who listens to this podcast, know those feelings. And it's so important. I mean, to me, literature is still the most important thing. It's more important than anything. Spoken word storytelling, books, and it does touch on those universal issues that need to be expressed in multiple ways, just so people don't feel alone in what they're going through. And you have succeeded, my friend.
He had, I don't speak in long, eloquent sentences in real life.
I haven't noticed that to not be true.
And he doesn't write in long, eloquent sentences. We were sort of from the same place with a lot of things. I remember reading, was it Jim Carroll, The Book of Nods? You ever read that poetry?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, like 1 4-word sentence, and I was like, whoa.
Well, and one of the best songs ever written. This is for the people who died. I mean, that's such a great song.
Yeah, I mean, like what I just remember that, like, I get wrapped up in weird things and and visuals, and when I was little, I used to look at that. My mom used to blast that Pink Floyd The Wall. She used to blast it all the time with giant 70s speakers. And I used to get so into the artwork. Like, it was so different to me. I just stare into the artwork of that thing, and and then the music, and it started working. And then they made that animation of it, animated movie, The Wall. And I just remember, like, I get into something and I get lost in something. And it happens to me a lot,
But that's the beauty when first of all, if you get lost in your art or somebody else's art, that means it's extremely valid, because art is supposed to be, besides the self to the universal wound, something that takes you so far into yourself, you can get out of yourself.
Yeah.
Jesus, that's a great sentence.
It really was. I like how artists respect other artists. I always, especially musicians, for some reason, I see great musicians I like, and they're friends with all these other great musicians I like. I like actors my age. I like actors who aren't my age. I like female actors of all ages. I like the process. I like to be impressed by people in the arts and all of it. I've never been like, oh, they suck. This is, I've always been like, ooh, I like that. I'll even like that one song if I don't like the album. Like, there's something impressive to me about people that put themselves out there. I remember there was a Jane's Addiction song that I really liked, and he was a friend of mine. I haven't talked to him forever, but it was him speaking between songs, and he goes, if you're some big fucking singer, why don't you fucking sing me something? And I love that line in between songs, like, go ahead, here's the mic, do it. I don't know.
It's one of the reasons we have the podcast, is just to put people on and up who do all kinds of very diverse forms of creation, who are not going to stop doing it, whatever it is, however popular or unpopular it is, that just have it in their blood. The blood boils. They have to get it out in one or two or multiple formats. And, it's mandatory to us to do this. We do feel it's the audio museum, and it's so important to share people who have a similar mindset about things. And it's just so important to me. And it's like, especially after the documentary on Me, The Wars Never Ever came out, like, now I have to do, that's why this is important. It's like, it's not only about me, it's about everyone I'm so fortunate to know, or who I meet, or who I respect. And that if we can bring them together and share their insight, share their existence, it's just so important.
Yeah.
Well, now that you just expressed your universal love, you got to give us an opinion on something you don't like. Top three worst bands in your opinion. I mean, do you like to hate some things, or are you actually really true that you want to love as much as you can love and avoid making negative opinions on aesthetic or?
You're asking Norman that, not me.
I'm asking Norman.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that I don't listen to. Like, speaking of Minor Threat, I like a certain area of punk rock, and then I don't like so much the orange, the Green Day,
the pop punk, the pop
Green
punk.
Day, the some.
Yeah,
I don't like mostly. I don't like most punk rock, but then what's punk rock? I love Joy Division, I love Magazine, I love Wire, I love a lot of things that were clumped into punk rock, but I got to get my chart.
You don't have to answer that question. I was just curious if something's going to pop right out.
That somebody just gave me a treatment. They want to do a television show about a place. I think it was in San Francisco. It was a I can't remember the name of it, or maybe Southern California. And they sent me the deck for it, and it has all these great punk rock bands. And then I saw one of those, and I was like, oh, never mind. I don't know what it is about the blue hair thing. I just, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, if it's, I don't know, if it's basically watered down to the further away it is for authenticity, at least for me, what I tend to side with is the risk taking, the kind of, why do I like Charlie Parker, but I'm not into the Young Lion early 80s jazz guys? Like if the template's already set and the risk has already been expressed, and you have 40 years of people filtering it and refining all the permutations of the template, it's a little less thrilling to me than someone who's willing to really just fall on their face with this kind of novel expression.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought, you know, part of what being cool was not giving a fuck who caring who thought you were cool. And then when, you know,
must be the coolest person on the fucking planet, because I really don't give a fuck.
You are the coolest fucking person on the planet.
I really don't give a shit.
You know,
I wish nobody gave a shit.
Yeah, you know, so there was a time when that punk rock thing, I think people were trying to be cool, and I was like, they're not really cool anymore, you know?
Well, Norman, I want to ask you, and this is kind of going deep and going dark past. It's like, look, suddenly you're asked to act, and was the first thing a play you were in? Plays are very different than movies.
So yeah, I was in LA. I was working at a motorcycle shop, the one that Hunter has the story from, actually, and that story happened, and I got fired, and a friend of mine took me to a party in LA, and I got real drunk, and I started yelling at people from the top of a balcony in this big ass house. And I had these glasses on, and the glasses had a broken arm. I took off somebody, and they'd fall, and I'd be like, ah, rah, rah, rah. And somebody asked me to be to rep me as a manager for an actor, and I said, fuck you.
You're already the Hunter S. Thompson of actors at that point, at that party that you were drunk at.
I was wasted, and then so they ended up taking me to pizza at the place called Damiano's on Fairfax. Isn't there anymore. And the director for this play showed up, and they said, oh, would you be in this play? And I was like, what do I have to do? And they're like, well, you're the understudy. You probably won't have to do it ever. And I'm like, how much are you paying me? And they paid me. And the first day of the play, the dude that I was playing understudy to didn't show up. And I had to go out and do it. Didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And a lady from William Morris was in the audience and signed me.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, look, honey, your life is golden, but that's what I want to ask you about. I mean, were you just like, what the fuck? And what about suddenly then modeling jobs come in? Are you like, what the fuck? I mean, did you just feel like a golden egg fell on your head?
Yeah, I mean, the modeling thing was different because I did 6 Ways to Sunday, that movie with Debbie Harry and Isaac Hayes, you know, amazing. And there was a big photographer that came there and took pictures behind the set who knew the director. And so that she had a dinner with Mucha Prada, and they were doing a series of ads that actors were doing. Joaquin Phoenix did it, Tim Roth did it, Willem Dafoe did it, a Japanese actor did it. And Mucha said to, I can't remember her name, she's a big photographer too, Annie Leibovitz maybe. And
okay.
Sitting with him, she goes, oh, I'm looking for a next actor to do this Prada campaign. And she goes, well, I shot this kid. And then all of a sudden I get a call saying it's between me and Nicolas Cage to do a Prada campaign.
And you were pretty young, I guess.
Really young.
You're still young.
And I ended up doing it.
Did you just go, this is freaking weird?
Yeah, I was like, what do I do? I didn't know. I'm short and I don't look like a model. I was like, what do I do? But, you know,
all the girls love you, and so do the men.
They were going really moody with it. That's what they kept telling me. And you know, I have beady little eyes. I guess it worked. And
Norman, I got to ask you then. Norman, are you moody? You seem like such a chill dude. I'm sure there's been a lot of darkness in the past, but you feel like now at this age, at this point, after what all you've done, and also does that book, I mean, it is a different thing. Having a book, you've had other books, your photography books. Does it give you a sense of like, yes, I needed to do that? Is it a different feeling having a book, a novel out?
It is, yeah.
It is, right?
It is. It's, you know, I'm always doing something and putting a little bit of myself out there, but I'm like, don't look at me. Don't look at me. You know, even the acting thing on the show, there's little bits of me in there, and there's a lot of crying and a lot of screaming and a lot of this. But for some reason, I don't feel like you're looking too deep into me all the time. I can take little bits of it. You know, it's not hard to like start to cry, but I don't like the feeling when it's over. You know, it doesn't go away very fast. This has a little bit of something. It's different when you do an art show because you put your shit on the wall and you kind of stand in the corner and people. It's different than the acting. Acting, you're literally,
And by the time it comes out, after you've acted, it's like months, sometimes years later.
True.
And when did you finish the novel? And again, does that just a different kind of satisfaction? I mean,
when I finished the audiobook for it, I felt a really for some reason, hearing me read it out loud for weeks. I'm not very good at it. It took me forever, but something about reading out loud, I felt a real sense of accomplishment when that was over. It felt like you do it in the dark, and now I just threw it out there, and now there you go. Let's go. Go do your thing. You do these book signings and stuff, and there are a lot of fans of The Walking Dead, or fan of Boondock Saints, or fan of something else, and they're there to get an autograph and get a selfie and do the thing. And I'm like, please read it, and some of those people will take it, they'll read it, they'll dissect it, they'll try to figure it out, they'll try to, what did he really mean? They won't take it for face value, they'll try to get in there and figure it out, and that's fine. Just, I kind of want them to read it. And I think a lot of people will listen to the audiobook and they'll hear me say it, and you can tell the parts of me reading it that mean the most, or maybe they're a little personal. And if you're looking for hints, that's the way to do it. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Norman, I'm really happy you wrote this book. I can't wait to hear the audio version. I know the parts of the book that are you, and I'm glad that you've exposed them to me, or I dug in deep enough to know what they are, because I know what they are.
I know.
And it's important. And the main point of this book, The Ravage, is really the heartfelt need of outsiders, of people that have had, tragic life stories, either from just family or fuck ups, or just thinking that they've done everything right, but really in the end it's wrong because they're not satisfied, into looking for something more. And that's, what the goal of that's the problem so many people have, is they are dissatisfied. They don't know what they need. They don't even know what they want, but they know that this is not necessarily it. And where do they go from there? And I think that's just a really important emotion to, allow other people to know that they're not alone in those feelings. And to know that really, there are solutions, because you can find your tribe, and you can change your life, and you can do things differently, and you can get out of abusive relationships, and you don't have to fucking take it.
Yeah.
You don't have to fucking take it.
Yeah.
And if that means you have to hop a fucking freight train, well, sometimes, realistically or metaphorically, sometimes you have to hop a fucking freight train. I hopped a Greyhound bus. That's what I had to do. Fortunately, I didn't have to hop the rails. My heels were too high anyway. But you just know that, whatever it is that you're not satisfied with, it's not the end. And there are ways to change it. And it's important that you fucking take matters into your own hands, and just, there comes a point you got, enough is enough, but it's not enough. And I want more. So where do I go to get it? And sometimes you have to go deep inside yourself, because if you don't know what you want, you're not going to have it anyway. And if you've only been exposed to things that you don't want, it's really hard to figure out what it is that you do want, that you do need, that you do deserve.
Yeah. Grab an iron skillet. Some people deserve it.
Fuck yeah. Some people deserve a fucking frying pan upside the motherfucking head, honey. I am not adverse to punching a fucker in the face when they deserve it. Oh, they cannot afford it, but when they deserve it. Norman Reedus, I am so happy to have had you on this show.
I love you. Thank you for having me on.
I love your soul, my friend. I don't know what we're going to do, but someday we will do it. Hey, the ride is Ride with Norman Reedus. Is there another season coming?
Yeah, I head to Los Angeles tomorrow, and then 4 days after that, I go to Utah with Keanu Reeves. So
that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I remember once, I don't know, I was driving through Joshua Tree, and I just texted you and I said, I'm in Joshua Tree. And I think you said, yeah, I just did ride through there. And I'm like, Well, I guess that's why I texted you.
Yeah, I
I
did.
felt you on those roads. I love Ride. I love that show. I love the people that you expose, the people you just that you show the diversity of people out there. It's so important. Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Have a great time
Thanks.
in LA. Good luck with the book. We're pumping it. I'm pimping it because that's what we do. This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and Norman Reedus. The Ravage is out now.